Hello, everybody, and welcome to History Bite number 352, dated August 29th, 2022. I'm Walter, your mobile historian and blue-collar scholar. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This History Bite is entitled The Anglo-American Loan of 1946. Before I begin, however, I'd like to formally invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Juarez Lee Shelton, M.A. And in addition to that, please also click on the little notification bell immediately to the right of the subscribe button. In doing so, you will receive notifications when I post new, exciting, and enlightening videos in history, law, political science, theology, and philosophy. Thank you so much in advance. You are the ultimate best. So again, this History Bite is entitled The Anglo-American Loan of 1946. The Anglo-American Loan of 1946 was a $3.75 billion loan made by the United States of America to the United Kingdom after World War II for the purpose of keeping Britain's economy functioning and viable in the post-war period. Towards the end of World War II, the British government was essentially bankrupt, having depleted their primary and reserve funds in paying for the conflict between 1939 and 1945. Additionally, the cancellation of the American Lend-Lease program on the 21st of August 1945 placed a severe strain upon the British economy. I have a separate video focused on the Lend-Lease program, so please check that out for greater contextual understanding. So, the British had become dependent upon both the food, supplies, and material from the Lend-Lease program and sought to retain some of the military equipment obtained therefrom after the war was over. Because of these factors, the Anglo-American Loan came into being. The United States would sell the desired military equipment to Britain for 10 cents on the dollar, roughly $1.75 billion. Okay? In its prudent search for more funds, the British government dispatched John Maynard Keyes to both the United States of America and Canada to see what was possible. In both America and Canada, Keyes would be offered massive loans with very favorable terms. The negotiators on both sides were as follows. For the United States, Secretary of the Treasury Fred Vinson, later Chief Justice of the United States, as well as William Clayton, Secretary of State for Economic Affairs. For the United Kingdom, John Maynard Keyes and Lord Halifax, who was Britain's ambassador to America. Needless to say, the Americans treated this as a business deal, whereas the British saw the mission in a more humanitarian format. Ultimately, the United States offered a loan of $3.75 billion, which would be $56 billion in contemporary dollars. And Canada offered $1.19 billion, which would be $18 billion in 2022 dollars. And Canada, both loans were at a very low 2% interest rate, for the record, making the total amount repaid to the U.S. $7.5 billion, which would be 3.8 billion British pounds, and to Canada, 2 billion, which would be 1 billion British pounds. Okay? The American loan was very controversial in the UK, with many members of Parliament denouncing it vehemently. Others, however, viewed it as advantageous and essential. In America, some 58% of the public disapproved of this loan, with Congress being divided along party lines and within the parties as well. More or less, Britain had no choice but to take this money to ensure the continuation of its fragile economy. Additionally, were it not accepted by Parliament, Britain would be forced to abandon its colonial holdings in numerous parts of the world. Something that would ultimately happen soon thereafter anyway. If not that, the other option would be to force Britons to revert to a standard of living for which most would be unaccustomed to, which would be political suicide for any government in power at the time. So the loan was more or less a mandatory thing. After being approved by Congress on the 13th of July, 1946, the loan was formally accepted under the government of Prime Minister Clement Attlee on the 15th of July, 1946, and was to be paid off in 50 annual installments starting in the year 1950. Canada's loan was approved in March of 1946 and was payable along an analogous timeline. Much of the funds would be spent on Britain's overseas empire, interestingly enough, and not domestic initiatives. The money itself would be supplemented in 1948 by aid from the U.S.-sponsored Marshall Plan. All right. Britain received 26% of this total aid from the Marshall Plan, which was the equivalent of some $3.3 billion. Unlike the loan, Marshall Plan aid did not have to be repaid. The loan itself had numerous conditions, most notably that of the convertibility of sterling. Initially, the conversion stipulation caused more harm than good to the British economy. However, it allowed the country to defer payments if the convertibility rate essentially made repayment unfavorable and pointless. Britain would exercise this option and not make payments as a result of that in the years 1956, 1957, 1964, 1965, 1968, and 1976. In spite of the occasional difficulties in repayment, no successive British governments ever attempted to renegotiate the terms of the loan or have it discharged altogether. On the 29th of December 2006, the British government under Tony Blair made the final payment on this loan in the sum of 83 million or 45 million British pounds to the United States and 23.6 million, which would be 12 million British pounds, to Canada. This installment was 6 years late, having been due officially in the year 2000. It was through this final payment that World War II came to a financial end for the United Kingdom. Upon completion of this final payment, the then British Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Ed Balls, issued a formal statement to the United States thanking them for their gracious support during World War II. So in conclusion, the Anglo-American Loan of 1946 was a crucial lifeline to keep the British economy afloat after World War II. It provided funds necessary for both the home front and its then declining empire. Britain was essentially bankrupt after the war and needed this money to a large extent to continue basic government operations. But remember, much of this money was spent on overseas matters related to its empire, not on the home front. A significant amount of the money spent on the home front came from the Marshall Plan in 1948. But Britain, being keenly aware of this situation and understanding its financial nadir, graciously accepted the loan from the United States with these very favorable terms. 2% interest over a 50-year period, as well as the ability to defer payments if the convertibility rate made the payments unfeasible. You know, the U.S. was very generous with those terms, okay? Because of the deferred payments, the loan would not be satisfied until December 2006, 61 years after the conclusion of World War II. So with the final payment, the Second World War and its effects would come to an end for the UK, and they moved on from this most difficult chapter in their history. So thank you so much for listening to this video on the Anglo-American Loan of 1946. If you have any questions or controversies, you can leave them down below, and I'll be happy to answer them. Hope you learned something in this video, expanded your mind. Hope you have some questions, perhaps to learn more about this most interesting subject. Me being the Anglophile that I am, I'd be happy to help you out anywhere you might have difficulties. So I want you to continue to have a great day and take with you these timeless words of my teaching role model, Mr. George Feeney. Believe in yourself, dream, try, and do good. Take care, and I'll talk to you at the next video. Peace.